Wait, I think I got it. Okay, let's try it. And I'm gonna switch to this F1. And I think we're live now. Yeah. Thanks everyone. Sorry. Thanks for your patience. We were having a little bit of an issue with the audio, but I think it has been fixed.
All right.
But well, thanks everyone for joining. We have an exciting talk today. So I'm just gonna start with some housekeeping here. Let me share my screen. So, Abel, can you enable screen sharing?
You should be able to screen share now.
No, it says that host disable participant screen sharing.
Oh, let me see if I can fix that. I don't
Sorry,
see
folks. We just switched to Zoom from Meetup, from Google Meet, and we're having some difficulties.
Yeah, I don't see the option to actually.
What I have experienced in the past is that the host is making those that are needing to present as hosts too. So if you convert Orlando or me into hosts, then
I think you should be able to share now.
Okay. Yeah, got it.
We can see your screen now, Orlando.
Perfect. Okay, so just quickly, because we're already starting late, but well, we're the Charlotte Java user group. We're happy to have every single one of you here with us. We're gonna have an exciting talk. These are the places where you can find us, our website, our Twitter handle, and this type of talks, you can find them in our YouTube channel for later if you wanna watch the streaming again, or you want to share it with some of your people, coworkers, or friends that were not able to join in real time. That's the place where you can find the videos. At the end of the talk, we're going to raffle a 1-year license for any JetBrains product. So really cool stuff. Jonathan will be making a question about what you're going to see during his talk. So pay attention to all the details and you can get 1 license. I just wanted to quickly recommend this DevNexus. This is, well, in my opinion, the best Java conference, at least on this side of the state. It's in February, and this year, because of COVID and everything, it's going to be online and it's free. So there's no excuse. I mean, there's really great content there. So I will highly recommend you registering, and the first 500 get some free swag. So the sooner the better. And quickly, our next talk in this November, it has been already published in meetup.com. We're going to have Nacho talking about refactoring. So another exciting talk for next event. So again, well, I'm going to let Jonathan introduce himself. We really appreciate you doing this He's in Barcelona, so really late for him, but still being a good team player and trying and sharing some of his knowledge here. So go ahead, Jonathan.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share my little knowledge with your community. I'm very pleased to. So, well, today what I'm going to talk about is about migrating an application from Spring Boot to Quarkus. So if some of you are already using Quarkus, please, well, they are going to put it on the YouTube chat, right? So just put it on the chat, and then we will see how many of you are using Quarkus at the moment. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, you should see the first slide. Okay, so the motivation of this talk is mainly because I was hearing a lot about Quarkus. And yeah, not because I'm working for Red Hat, just because it's everywhere, the media. And I was also a user of a Spring Boot, even here in Red Hat, and in the past in my other companies. So I decided to challenge the facts and the ideas that I was receiving as well, Quarkus as the promised land. So I wanted to challenge that. So and migrate a real, let's say, not complex, but a real application into Quarkus. So I accepted the challenge and I migrated this application. Well, what I'm going to show you today is this content. So first I will introduce myself, who am I, in order for you to have a bit of context of who are you listening to. Also, what you can expect of this presentation. So in order to maintain the expectations in a good balance. Also, for those of you that do not know what it is Quarkus, and you are here because you are curious, and I'm very pleased of that, I will introduce Quarkus. Not a big detail, not very deeply, but a brief introduction. Also, I will try to answer, I think that the main question that we should make ourselves when we do something, that is why we need to do it. First, I told you that I decided to migrate just because I wanted to challenge. But yeah, that's probably for fun. But if you are in a company, well, you need to think very carefully about the why. Because probably any movement that you're going to do will involve time and money. So that answer needs to be very well answered. After that, I will show the steps involved in the migration. So those steps that you need to do for migrating this application into Quarkus. After that, I will show a shallow performance comparative between the different approaches. It's a very shallow comparative in order for you to see real numbers, but it's not super exhaustive performance. And yeah, it's simply just to compare the number given by the different approaches, considering that they are running in the same environment. And finally, I will give you references to different materials, trainings, documents, and tools that you can use if you want to migrate from Spring Boot to Quarkus. So let's start the dance. Well, I'm one of the JUG organizers at BarcelonaJUG from 2012. Also co-founder of the JBCNConf. It's a conference that we host here in Barcelona every year. And this 2021 is going to be the 6th edition. We didn't have the 6th edition on 2020, just for obvious reasons. And I'm also a software engineer working at Red Hat in the application modernization and migration team. Here you can find the different ways to contact me with my Twitter handle, my email, my blog, where you can find the article of this presentation, also other articles as how to do good presentations. This is an article that I did after attending a speech training in Munich, and it has interesting things. And also another article that I'm very proud of, that it is about test containers and how you can test your application on your CI environment during your CI/CD process as if you were in production. So having the whole infrastructure, or almost, in order to be more confident when your application goes to QA in order to be tested. And finally, you can find my GitHub repositories in GitHub for my work at Red Hat or my personal projects. Okay, so what can you expect of this presentation? It's an opinion. So we are very used to opinions nowadays, right? So this is only my opinion. It's not a magistral lecture about trying to teach you how to do things. And is something that works simply. It's not intended to be super optimized. Simply, it works. And it's not also it's not the way. So I mean, I follow one approach. You can follow others, or you can simply decide these libraries, but not these ones. So there are different ways of tackling the migration. So this is only one of them. And the versions that I've used are Spring Boot 2.5 and Quarkus 1.7. Nowadays, Quarkus is in 1.9, I think. It's has been already released. So, well, that was the version that I was using at the moment. Okay, so about Quarkus. Now I'm going to give you a brief description about what it is. But first, retaining your memory, which is this game. Okay. So, what it is Quarkus? Well, it's a technological stack with 3 different flavors, Java, Scala, and Kotlin, that it is mainly defined to target Kubernetes, and also with the focus on being GraalVM compatible in order to create native artifacts. You can also run it on hotspot, but in my personal opinion, you will get the most of it if you go to native. And also another thing that for me is very important is that it is not trying to reinvent the wheel. So you don't have to learn new tricks. In English, there's a saying, so it's hard to teach new tricks to old dogs or something like that. I can't remember exactly. So now for me, it's very difficult to learn new things. So if I'm used to Hibernate, I will continue using this, or Vertex, or Kafka, or REST Easy. So it's not the purpose of Quarkus to create other libraries that you need to learn in order to use Quarkus. That would be probably a bad approach, and the adoption will be far less than what it is now. So some key facts, let's say numbers or ideas that I want you to get from this slide, is that Quarkus is super fast compared to the traditional stack. It's way smaller in terms of memory footprint. It's very focused on easy to code. As I said before, they are not reinventing the wheel. You are using the same libraries that you were using. And the new things, they try to use configuration over coding and easy ways to make you be more productive. It's obviously open source, and they have very fast-paced releases. So they release one version every 2 weeks or less, even depending on on the date. So they are working a lot on Quarkus and its extensions in order to produce better core, uh, more optimized, uh, faster, or even new extensions, fixing bugs or improving those extensions. So they are constantly working on the tool. And as I said, that they are not reinventing the wheel, it's because they are using at the moment more than 90 extensions that it is simply using an already common used library in order to optimize it and make it available to be compiled natively with GraalVM. So it's for me it's very interesting. So I don't need to learn new ways of doing things. Simply I will continue using those libraries, and it will produce the artifact optimized and prepared for GraalVM. A bit of history of Quarkus. Well, Quarkus life is around 2 years, not more. So from the first release to now, it's 2 years. And there are lots of releases. They are constantly working, as I said, every 2 weeks. So for considering 2 years for this tool, it has evolved a lot, and a lot of people are adopting it, and more companies are using it in production. Regarding memory footprint, well, here you can see that it is being compared traditional cloud native stack with Quarkus native with GraalVM. So you can see the difference is huge. So it's 12 megabytes compared to 136. It's a super huge difference. Even going to JVM, so not native compilation, we are going half the value on memory footprint. But when we go to the boot time, we are finding enormous difference. So you go from more than 4 seconds to 16 milliseconds. I don't know what to say here. It's super different. They seem like to be in different universes. I don't know. It's totally different. So with 16 milliseconds, probably then you can think on going to serverless or Knative, or even going traditional ways of having your application running on Amazon. But because it starts so fast, you can even reduce the machine that you're using. So I don't know, going from a T5 going down. So, and then probably you can just simply doing this migration, you are going to save money because you can have less powerful machines in Amazon to get the same result. So it's giving good opportunities, and well, seems very interesting for me, at least on the theory. paper, you can put everything in paper. So let's test if that is what it is promised or not. Also, I want to give you like a big context of the community behind Quarkus. So at that moment, so it's at the beginning of 2020, there were 52 authors. Nowadays are more than 350. And they were creating and closing issues super fast. And a lot of people gave the star to the project in GitHub. So there's a lot of people interested on this approach. A lot of people being added as committers to the project, and obviously with the sponsoring or backing by Red Hat. But I want to give you the idea that it is a very alive project that is going more and more alive as time passes. So let's gonna talk about migration. Again, I expect you to know which is this game, and especially this one, because although I invested a lot of money, in this game, I never finished the first stage. So it's like something that I'm missing in my life, and one day I will succeed. So remember which is this game. Let's go to the stage 2. So why I decided to migrate? Well, first I'm gonna tell you which is my experience with the Spring Boot, and probably we can share some of the items here. So first, for me, it was easy to develop. You can always find some annotations that you can put on your class, and well, something happens. In the end, you end with a class with tons of annotations, and that's why God invented the mouse wheel in order to scroll down to find your methods. So it was easy to code with Spring, but it was always time was always a something critical, just because it took a lot to start, and the tests, well, they took ages, just because probably you could improve it a bit, but every time that you start the context, lots of things are being started, and then the test takes a lot, and also consumes a lot of memory. Well, nowadays we have machines with a lot of memory, but also, as the Parkinson principle, the bigger the space, the bigger the trash that you can put on that. So we have bigger machines, therefore we have bigger applications. So it's always the same result at the end. Big applications taking a lot of memory. And also, one of the things that I didn't like especially is that there were a lot of things happening under the hood. So whenever you start your application and you go to the log, you will find lots of services. Some hopefully are those that you are interested on having started, but you will find some of few that you were not aware that they were being started, and even you don't know why they are started. But Spring Boot decides for whatever reasons. So there are lots of things happening under the hood that I don't have this feeling of control. And Quarkus, well, what I heard of it is that it was easy to develop applications, So that's okay for me. But well, it's something that we can discuss about it. So one thing is easy for me, or is it difficult for you, or the other way around? So this is what. But the important thing is that it produces a fast application. It produces a lightweight application that consumes less memory, and also that creates something that can be compiled natively with GraalVM. Oh, that seems interesting because, as I said before, now I can think on going to serverless, Knative, or function as a service using Amazon Lambdas, for instance, and then I will pay less in my public provider uh, just because I'm only going to pay for the cycles that my code is running. But whenever it finishes, well, it will scale down to 0. That's it. I'm not going to pay for that. The other approach is that you have your Spring application running 24/7 and you are paying even uh, if the application is not doing anything, because it doesn't have this scale to 0 approach. So yeah, I think these are very interesting aspects that I want to explore. Okay, so the project that I'm going to migrate is the Spring Boot Pet Clinic REST that is using, well, it's not a big application and not a complex application because it comes from like a demo application for Spring, but it contains most of the usual libraries that I'm being used in past projects using a Spring Boot. So Spring Data, Web, Security, the Swagger, Actuators, Micrometer, CDI, AOP, and Catch. Well, AOP is not so common, but for the rest, it's very common to have all of them in any project. So that was interesting for me. So I decided to move to Quarkus and see, okay, what do I have to switch? Well, in this case, from Spring Data, I need to go to Hibernate Panache. And then I have to go to JAX-RS for REST, or to Quarkus Security, or to OpenAPI for the Swagger documentation, or Small Right Health for the actuators, Microprofile Metrics for Micrometer, and CDI Spec for CDI. We don't have any destination for AOP. And for the Spring Catch, we also have Quarkus local catch using this library called Caffeine. This project also came with 3 flavors of persistence. I only wanted to migrate one, just for the sake of time, and also because the other 2 I don't think are so common. So one was Spring JDBC querying. Well, you can use that. You can do the same using an extension called Agral, but that was not my point. And also Spring Data JPA. So I didn't do that migration. I focused only on JPA migration. And JMX, I didn't migrate it because it's not supported by GraalVM. So let's start with the migration steps. Remember, which is this game? I think this was one of the first ones that it had like a simulator to play it. Okay, think about it. Let's go with the migration steps. Well, for the CDI, it's about migrating the annotation. If you are still using AutoWire, go to inject. That's easy. And also annotate your beans with application scope, and you will have the bean. It has auto injection on constructors, and it's lazy by default. So very convenient. It's easy to migrate. The only drawback is that with the Spring, you can decide which is the implementation class based on the profile that you are passing on the command line. We don't have that in Quarkus, but you can do it manually. So using CDI, you say, okay, this method is going to produce an implementation of the interface vehicle, and which class? Okay, it will be decided inside the method, and it will be depending on the profile argument that it is passed on the command line. It's easy, but you have to do it on your own. And that in Quarkus, all injected members have to be package private. They cannot be private. For the JPA repositories, well, it's a matter of going to Panache repository interface, and then in runtime you will have the common methods to access and work with an entity: list, find, persist, delete, you name it. In this case, what I did was go into Panache repository base, just because the Spring project is using an integer as the identity class for entities, but Panache repository uses by default a long. So in order to not changing the code, well, you can go this step further, and that's it. The only drawback that we can find here is that we don't have query DSL methods. So those methods called find by name and surname equals to none, we don't have that methods. So you can just simply inject a method with the query SQL, but you cannot do it with query DSL methods. Especially, I personally prefer injecting the SQL in the method instead of using these query DSL methods, just because when you start creating a complex query, then it turns very difficult to understand a query DSL method. But it's a personal taste, so you can do whatever you want. With the Spring REST, it's a matter of moving to JAX-RS. So it's replacing one mapping with another. Well, it says REST controller, you say path. When it says get mapping, you say get. The only difference is that with request mapping, that you can pass the 3 arguments, to move to Quarkus, you need to break it down in the different individual annotations. And that's it. Nothing to mention here. With the security, well, in Spring, we use pre-authorize and then an expression that will allow or reject that role to execute that method. With Quarkus, we don't have expression language for the security. So what we need to do is to simply add as a list the different roles that can access this method. This is the difference, basically. Also, this project is using persisted security in the database. So for that, it's only a matter of adding the Elytron security JDBC extension. When I mean extension, I mean POM dependency. Okay. So it's adding this extension and then configuring on the properties file, well, the SQL to get the role given a username and different arguments for the persistence of the security. Very easy and no code involved. And simply we don't have the expression language for the role security. That was the only drawback that I found. With the cross origin, it's very easy. Just simply add these 2 attributes, 2 properties into the properties file, and that's it. It's very easy. But the only drawback is that with Spring, we can configure the cores at the controller level. But in Quarkus, I didn't find the way to do this. So as you have seen, we can do it in the properties, but it is a global level. So Well, this is only another drawback for this. Regarding the metrics, well, it's a matter of adding a small right metrics extension that, well, it's gonna use the micro profile, and you will have counted and timed annotations on the methods, and then you will have those custom metrics in the output. By default, this extension is not giving the same naming as micrometer. It's giving the same as it is defined in micro profile metrics. So there's a way to make it compatible with micrometer. So if you add this property that you can see at the end, then you will have the same result as with micrometer. So no big deal, easy and fácil. Okay, so as I said, it is the open metrics naming, but if you add this property, we will have the micrometer naming. But you still have to change the interface. So the annotations are almost the same, but the package that they belong to is completely different. One belongs to micrometer, the other one belongs to microprofile. So in this case, we have another extension called micrometer that intends to make that you don't have to modify your code because it's going to use the same interfaces, but you have to simply change the dependency in your POM. So you don't have to touch your code. Quarkus will do this its magic on build time. The only drawback that I found is that, well, in the Spring project, it is using aspect-oriented programming in order to get metrics to the database access with a small code that covers several methods in the repository class. We don't have that in Quarkus. So we need a workaround. So, or you annotate all your repository methods with the annotations that I shown before, or you create a CDI interceptor, or we will see in a minute the easiest way to do this, but for that I will need to show the AOP code. Let's move for a bit for validation. So for validation is coming from the controller advice in Spring to implementing exception mapper in Quarkus, because we are using Hibernate validator. They are going to use the same valid annotation and the same constraints that you put in your Pojo, and the code, the body of the method is very similar. So no big deal on changing, but you need to change some things. Regarding Swagger or OpenAPI documentation, well, if you add the extension OpenAPI, then by default all your REST resources are going to be published in the API definition. But if you also want to give like global information for your API, then it's only a matter of extending application class and then adding this OpenAPI definition annotation with all the attributes, and then you will have your API well documented. It also gives you Swagger UI out of the box on the test profile, but you can have it also in the production profile. The only drawback that I found is that with Spring, you can configure which is the package that you want to be scanned in order to get the controllers. So you could be hiding some API endpoints. I didn't find the way to do this exactly with Quarkus. So apparently it's like all or nothing. So everything in your application will be published in the Swagger documentation. That's the only drawback that I found. And now we come back to the metrics. And in this case, we are going to see, okay, this approach using AOP. As you can see in the left, there's an aspect that has a method with an around expression that covers all the methods in the class repository or subclasses. So with this line, we are executing a method at the entrance and at the exit of tons of methods. So that's awesome. I've always loved AOP. So this is a very easy and convenient way of doing auditing on methods. So as we don't have that in Quarkus, and we are not going to add the annotations for all the methods that we have in our repositories, what we can do is just simply add this property, Quarkus Hibernate ORM metrics enabled, and we will get exactly the same as with the aspect for all the work that Hibernate is doing. So we are having the same result, but in this case with only one line in the attributes, in the properties. Not even needed to compile and test this this feature. So it's awesome. Perfect. Well, everything has been said about the metrics in this case. And now it's the turn of local caching. The approach is very similar. It's a hash mapping memory. And well, we need to change the annotation. In this case, with Quarkus, it's called catch result. We are going to set which is the name of the catch. And in the properties, we are going to define the different values to configure this catch. And we can have all the catches that we want. And that's it. It's very similar. It's just replacing one annotation, more or less. About testing, well, in this case, there's more work involved. In this case, we are moving from mock MVC to rest assured. As we say in Spanish, they are alike as an egg is as a nut, o se parecen como huevo y una castaña. Okay. What I want to say is that they are super different. So you need to do a lot of work converting one thing to the other. But for my personal point of view, I prefer the rest assured version. One, because it's not coupled to the tool that is providing the rest of the things. So I can have rest assured to test every other things. And that also the taxonomy, well, the looking of the expressions, for me, it's more clear to see what am I testing and which are the values that I'm expecting. But yeah, again, it's a personal taste. But in this case, I needed to do some work just to rewrite all these tests. There's also one drawback on the Quarkus one, because I didn't find a way to simulate roles. So with the Spring, we can test methods considering the role. But with Quarkus, I needed to create a user assigned to a role, and then I can pass the user to try to execute the method. And then I can check if the role is allowed or not. Well, there is more work involved. I think it's more convenient the Spring way, but let's see, probably in the future, Quarkus people gives another round of changes to this. But at the moment is this is the situation. And also with the Spring one, it is being used JSON path to check for the values on the response, and with rest assured, it is using by default GPath. That it is a bit different, but not so different. So yeah, a few changes also. So now what we need to test our application is a database, because we are not going to test our application directly connected to a Postgre database. Or we could do it, because I will link this point with my other presentation that is about test containers. We could use test containers in order to test the real database that we are going to use in production, except exactly the same engine, exactly the same version, exactly the same configuration. And that would give us more confidence than testing in each two, that for some things like Flyway, probably, you need to create two sets of files, because H2 doesn't have on conflict do nothing. I don't know. It's complicated whenever you have an in-memory database. So why using it? Use the real one. Okay, but that's another story that I can share about test containers. In this case, we needed to simulate H2 database. So this is the way to do it. Quarkus test resource, and we define which is the resource that we want to start on our tests. And then using our test configuration in the properties file, it will use those values to connect to the database and do whatever you have to do. Regarding the mocking, well, it's adding the dependency Quarkus JUnit Mockito, and then adding this add inject mock in our members, and then we will have our mocks. Very easy. And I'm sad to tell you that all this time, that it's about 45 minutes, probably you can forget 40 minutes of those 45. So about all the steps done to migrate the application, forget them. No use on them. There's a better way to migrate an application into Quarkus. Following, I don't know if you remember this sentence. It's old sentence said by Bruce Lee. It's around 50 years ago. And what he said was, I'm going to use the art of fighting, but without fighting. And in this case, we are going to use the art of migration without migrating. That's even better, right? So let's explore this new approach. So don't touch your code. That's it. You are going to use the Spring extensions from Quarkus, and you don't touch your code. Quarkus in the build phase will do its magic. I don't know, it will use unicorns, glowing powder, I don't know. It will create what it needs. You simply stay with your code using request mapping, using REST controller, wherever you want from the Spring Web. And then Quarkus will migrate it to the real code. And the same with the Spring dependency injection. Do not touch your beans. Repeat with me. Do not touch your code. Just simply let Quarkus to do the job and compile it. Obviously, every magic comes with a price. And in this case, the price is that it could be that you are using complex things that are not supported by the extension. Then you should find workarounds, because features not supported by the extension are not going to run. So, but if you are not using those corner cases, if you are using the common things, it's easy. Just simply don't touch your code and you will have it built by Quarkus. And the same with the Spring Data JPA. It's easy. Don't touch it. Unless you are using not supported invocations of any method of query by example executor or query DSL. If you are calling explicitly those methods, then it's not going to work. But if not, don't touch your code and just simply let Quarkus to build it and create the promised land. About the Spring security is exactly the same, and even better now, because now we have expressions on the roles checking. So it's like working, so coding Spring without using Spring. That's fantastic. So don't touch your code and move it. Quarkus will do the magic. Okay, so that's been enough for the migration. In the final step, I said, okay, now that I have migrated the application, let's test them, see the numbers, show me the money. So let's focus on build time. No benefit. It's bad. Nothing good comes out of this. Just because Spring Boot does a lot of things on runtime. Quarkus needs to do a lot of things on build time. And GraalVM needs to do huge things on build time. That's why we have this difference on numbers. But we are not concerned on build time. So because it's not me who is building the artifacts. It's my Jenkins, my Travis, or any other tool that you're using. It's them who are building, and probably building at 3 a.m. when I'm sleeping, or at least I should be. We are concerned about boot just because we are thinking on moving our application to serverless, to Knative, or to function as a service, or Lambdas in AWS, or because we want to re-architecture our microservices and we are going to have more scale ups and scale downs. And with the smaller machines, I think we can pay less to do even more work. So let's see. The Spring Boot version took around 7 seconds to start. My coffee machine takes 5 seconds to produce my ristretto. So these are 2 more seconds. Quarkus hotspot, it's 3 times faster. Well, it's an important number, but it's not like the end of the world. Good movie, by the way. Then we have GraalVM. That the number is like, okay, let's look at it again. I'm not wrong. Yeah, it's less than half a second. So coming from 7 seconds to less than half a second. Well, I don't know. It's a huge difference. So for me, it's yes, this is the promised land. Super green. Apple trees everywhere. So it's amazing. Let's see, what about the memory? Because Spring Boot, well, it is taking more than 600 megabytes. So, and this is only starting. So whenever it's running this memory, you know that it starts increasing, and well, with Quarkus hotspot, well, it's 2 times less. So it's well, it's nice, it's good, but it's not the end of the world again. But if I go to the Quarkus with GraalVM in native mode, I'm going to 21 megabytes. So I'm coming from more than 600, and I'm going to 21. So can you think about the changes on infrastructure that you can do with those numbers in terms of changing the machine in Amazon, or thinking on moving some applications into serverless? Well, I think this opens a big door of targets and options that were never available. So if you wanted to go to an Amazon Lambda, well, people used Python or Node.js instead of Java, just because Java was slow, But now this is not slow at all. And also, if you go native, there's no Java there. So yeah, it's very fast. So we can seriously consider this migration. Well, this has been all about the migration, but now I don't want to finish without sharing with you the information that I've used to do this migration that probably can help you. Also keep in mind which is this game. This is more modern, but it has versions, wow, very old. So think about this game too. So obviously, GitHub repositories for the original application and the migrated one on the Quarkus branch. Also, the main page for Quarkus, the Twitter handle for Quarkus, the developer.redhat.com page, where you will find a lot of trainings and documentations and tutorials free as a bird, online 24/7, free, well, totally open, well, Red Hat way. And also the mailing list. If you have any doubt, any question, you need help somehow, just send an email and the community will try to answer. They are very responsive. About the tutorials that you can find in the page, well, they are using a tool called Katacoda. It's nothing from Red Hat. They have lots of tutorials. Some are paid tutorials and others are free. I did once one about Kubernetes, and it's very interesting, very nice, just because you have the tutorial with all the steps, all the documentation, the training, and on the right, you have real environments. So in this case, we have an IDE, and we have a JVM installed, so it runs, it compiles, it works. We even have a local web browser tab and the OpenShift console So honestly, just try it out, because it's very easy and very nice to try something with this interactive way. And also important, you don't mess at all with your local machine. Everything is there. And they have tutorials for streaming with Kafka, the Spring developers, Prometheus, Hibernate. So there are a lot. Another document that I think it's very interesting for you to know, it's the cheat sheet that my colleague Alex Soto is publishing every time a new release of Quarkus has been released, with all the changes. So it's a very convenient way of being up to date. The page to start coding with Quarkus, code.quarkus.io. You will select which are the libraries that you want to include in your application, and it will download a zip file with all the infrastructure and some testing code already included. And finally, the tool that I'm working on, this is the tool that my team, we are all working on this tool. It's a free, open source. You can download it from GitHub, you can run it. And its main goal is to analyze statically any application, and using some rules, it will show you which are the things you need to change whenever you try to follow a migration path. So you can analyze an application that has camel 2, and you want to go to camel 3. Okay, it will analyze the application and it will tell you, okay, which are the components that are deprecated, which are the parameters that have disappeared, which are the components renamed, the dependencies that you need to remove, lots of things. And the same happens if you want to go from Oracle JDK to OpenJDK, if you want to go from monolith to cloud ready, or if you want to go from Spring Boot to Quarkus. So in this case, I analyzed the Spring Pet Clinic REST application, and it showed me 71 story points. So for every incident that the tool finds, it will give an effort on story points depending on the complexity of the change. So, well, here you can see different screenshots of the application with incidents by mandatory, optional, potential, whatever. Then you can see the incidents and then the files affected by those incidents. And if you go inside that file, you will see exactly which is the line that is creating the issue and the recommendation that you need to follow. Also, it will give you like a brief description in terms of technologies used by your application. And finally, you can also use Eclipse or VS Code plugin to directly analyze the source code, find the issues, and even apply the quick fixes directly to the code. So I totally recommend that you go and try this free application. And also, I would like to share few real use cases of different companies that they have already migrated from Spring Boot to Quarkus. I would say the most famous one is the Vodafone Greece, that replaced all the Spring Boot microservices to Quarkus. They didn't go to the native one just because they want to do it in like 2 steps, but just only in the first step, they say they achieved applications 50 and 60% more lightweight. Well, that probably means they have saved some money on the public cloud provider. And also they say that even their productivity has increased up to a 40%. Well, these are subjective numbers, but it's important to say that the big company is already trusting this migration and finding worth it to invest the time and the money to do the migration. And this is my last slide, that every talk, I don't want to finish with technology. I want to finish with culture. So I'm sharing with you 6 books that I've read and I love them. 2 novels, The Sea Cathedral. It's an historic one about a cathedral here in Barcelona, very interesting, in 14th century. Then The Last Caton. If you have read Da Vinci's Code, this is ways better than the Dan Brown's one. Uh, 2 books about how our brain works. Drive is a very famous one that tackles the motivation and tries to tell us if we are aware of the ways of being motivated or motivating others, if that's a really thing that you can do. And Thinking Fast and Slow introduces the 2 brains concept, the rational and the irrational, and then tries to answer the question that if we are as rational as we think we are. Finally, 2 sci-fi books, Futurological Congress, about simulated reality by Stanislav Lem, that probably you know him by Solaris. And it's a very funny book about simulated reality that totally encourage you to read it. And the famous one is the Philip K. Dick Ubik, also about simulated reality, and it's amazing, this book. And that's it. That's been the talk. I hope it's been interesting during the whole talk, and that I didn't that it wasn't not interesting. So if you have any questions, any doubts, please reach me in any of these forms that you can see on the left, with Twitter, mail, my blog post, or my GitHub repositories. And that's it. I again hope that every one of you knows which is this game. I don't ask for the version, only the game. And that's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Again, I think it's super late for you, and we really appreciate you doing this
the same result, but probably it will involve changes.
Okay.
For the Spring
Jonathan,
contract.
Can you repeat that? We lost the audio for a second.
Sure. For the Spring Kafka, I don't see there's any extension, but there's extension for Apache Kafka for Quarkus. I'm not sure exactly which are the differences, so I may guess that probably involves some coding in order to move from one to the other. So that's the answer. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. All right. I do have a question as well. So in your experience working with Quarkus, how do you see the adoption of Quarkus in the next few years? Do you think it's gonna have a high level of adoption, or what do you see?
I think so. So because more and more people are coming to be committers to Quarkus. Also, there are a lot of events, talks, videos, trainings about Quarkus. And also because, so if the solution would be just benefits on the JVM, okay, it's okay, it's good, but it's not enough to drive real change. But once you can go hand by hand with GraalVM and produce native artifacts, then you are entering in a different world. So you are producing native applications using Java and your traditional knowledge, your traditional teams. So that's a good point that I think more and more people are going to use. And then you need something to produce those native images. And for the moment, you can find Quarkus, you can find Micronaut, you can find Elidon. Spring is over there, but it's still not there yet. So I think that's the way to go. So I assume that more and more people are going to adopt Quarkus. Yes.
Okay, cool. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Unless Arturo or Orlando have any other questions, we can probably proceed with the raffle.
Yeah, we can go ahead.
All right. Well, again, it's gonna be the same dynamic. So we are gonna ask a question, and the first one to, well, in this case, Jonathan is gonna ask the question, and the first answer in the chat. Well, in this case, I think it's gonna be a little bit different. The one who gets the most games. Okay.
Exactly.
So yeah.
So I've shown some retro games screenshots during my presentation. There are 6. So the person that gives or that well discovers the most, then we'll have
the raffle. Yeah, that sounds good. So guys, please start just sending the answers. I mean, it doesn't matter if you don't know the 6 of them, but the one who gets the most wins the license.
Yeah, let's give 5 minutes.
Yeah, and for now we have another question in the chat from Binod. So while we wait for the answers for the raffle, we can answer the question. So the question is, how can we debug issues from the maintenance perspective in case we run in GraalVM? So I guess it's, what tools do you use to debug applications in GraalVM?
That's a good question, and I have to be totally transparent. I don't know.
Okay.
I haven't debugged never an application using a native application, but I will investigate and I will put the answers. I want to share my screen 1 second if it's possible.
Sure. Sure.
Okay. Just because I'm going to share with you the presentation, obviously, now in the comments. Okay. So you see the last slide, right? But if you connect to this presentation, you will find few more slides that are including questions and answers. These are the questions that people ask me during meetups and conferences. I put them all here, and once I have time and I reach people that know way better than me, then I will put the answer here. So I will add these questions that you gave me, and yeah, I will try to dig this.
Awesome.
Probably I will ask Oleg, that it is behind the GraalVM project, and for sure he will answer me and give a hint on this. So thank you for the question.
All right. So I think we have a winner. Has 4 games: Ghost and Goblins, Drag Out, Street Fighter, and Afterburner. How many of those are right?
Say again. Ghost and Goblins,
Drag Out, Street
Drag
Fighter,
Out.
and Afterburner.
Yeah, 3 out of 4.
3 out of 4. Okay. So I guess Daniel. Oh, and he added one more: Breath of the Wild, which is Zelda.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess Daniel won the license today. Thank you so much for participating, guys. And
Yeah,
yeah,
Daniel,
Orlando, you have any closing comments?
yeah, Daniel, if you can reach out to us so we can get your email at info@cltjug.org, and we'll send you uh, your license there. And he's asking what was the last one, the last game.
The last game. Well, I can tell from the beginning.
Yeah, last one is Metal Slug.
Yeah, Metal
Yes.
Slug.
The other one is Outrun.
Okay.
So the first one is Outrun. The second is Ghost and Goblins. You can find it in a different names, but Ghost and Goblins is the one that I knew.
Mhm.
Afterburner is the next one. Street Fighter, Zelda, and Metal Slug.
Yeah, those are the 6. Mhm.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Jonathan. I know it's really late for you, but we really appreciate you joining us and sharing some knowledge about Quarkus. That was a really good presentation. And well, everyone, thanks for attending, and we hope to see you on the next one.
See you. Bye.
Thanks,
Oh,
guys.
by the way, I've added the link to the slides in the chat in Zoom.
Okay, I'll just paste it in the YouTube stream so that everyone has it.
Perfect.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you very much.
Thank
See
you.
you.